The Saints worked out in pads for the first time this summer as Drew Brees reflects on what he's learned over the last 19 years in the league. Plus, what might be holding up Mike Thomas's new deal. Which players have been the early stars at camp. How the team's first-round draft pick has looked so far. And last year's first-rounder is ready for a breakout season. 3 days in, still no Mike Thomas, and the indications are it might last longer than we initially thought. I'm Doug Mouton. Welcome to 4th Down on 4. We'll get to the Thomas situation in a minute, but we want to start with number 9 in year 19. Drew Brees has evolved, changed over the years. Today's version of Brees gets rid of the ball quicker, throws fewer interceptions, and as Ricardo LeCompte reports, is constantly learning.
Nearly 2 decades in the NFL, but number 9 goes into each season like it's day one.
I had a coach tell me, as long as you're green, you will continue to grow, but as soon as you are ripe, you will soon be rotten, right? So as soon as you think you know it all, you're done, right? So I'm still green, still got things to learn.
Hard to believe Drew Brees is still the student in year 19. After all, he is the NFL's all-time leading passer. But at age 40, Brees continues to make that transition from pupil to teacher.
He's one of those programmed computers that who doesn't forget anything. He still remembers plays from 2003 and 2004, so that's very impressive to be in the same room with a guy who can retain that much information and knowledge.
That's the fun part in a lot of ways, and you know that's what keeps you young. I feel like I've lived it so many times that I know the way it's supposed to look. I know the way it's supposed to feel. I know the timing, and so as I sit there and I communicate that to a young guy, and I'm telling stories about, you know, this rep with Marcus Colston, or this rep with Jimmy Graham, or this rep with Lance Moore, whoever it might have been, right? That, you know, there's some credibility there, right? Like, okay, I saw what you guys in that offense was able to do when you were clicking on all cylinders, and all these guys want to be part of something like that again.
But it's not like Brees can't throw up numbers like that anymore. Last season was his most efficient. He recorded his highest completion percentage in his career and threw just 5 interceptions to 32 touchdowns. Longevity is hard to maintain in the NFL, and there's not really many cases where 40-plus-year-old quarterbacks last in the NFL. Well, Drew Brees has studied all the numbers, and he's trying to avoid that dreaded drop-off in production everyone is seemingly waiting for to eventually happen to him.
I feel like I'm pretty aware of what you lose with the aging process, right? And so everything I do from a training perspective, recovery perspective, is to combat that, right? And so you just try to stay ahead of that curve, right? Stay ahead of that curve. And so far, I feel like I'm beating it.
And as long as Brees remains in front of it, he'll continue to stay under center for the Saints.
Between him and Tom Brady, at this point, it's just a battle of attrition, right? I mean, they're just seeing who's going to outlast the other. They're going to play till they're 50, 55, and I mean, throwing technique's still there. You know, intermediate routes is always going to be there. The mind is what sets them apart, and there's not too many minds like Drew Brees.
Reporting in Metairie, Ricardo LeCompte, 4th Down on 4.
All right, thanks, Ricardo. Of course, the story in Metairie over the first weekend is the holdout of wide receiver Mike Thomas. And what's clouding the situation is he's not the only big-time receiver looking for a monster long-term deal. If Mike Thomas played this coming season on his current contract, he'd be the 96th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Obviously, that's ridiculous. But these negotiations might not be as simple as just agreeing on a new number. What other NFL receivers get might play a role. For now, Odell Beckham is the NFL's highest paid receiver at $18 million a year. In Atlanta, Julio Jones is at camp, but also hoping to get a new deal. The same is true for Cowboys wideout Amari Cooper and Bengals receiver A.J. Green. Those three are all practicing, and in fact, Green tore ligaments in his ankle this weekend and is now out 6 to 8 weeks. Thomas is the only guy holding out of that group, and make no mistake about it, when other teams game plan for the Saints, slowing down Thomas is the focal point.
There were some game plans this year that just, you know, were we're pretty unbelievable as far as just the amount of attention, right? And the amount of respect, really. But the message I send to other guys when that happens is that just opens up opportunities for you, right?
And Thomas's teammates told us as camp opened, they absolutely support him.
I'm going to focus on being the best I can be. I'm going to wish Mike T the best that he can be. And I know he's out there working somewhere. Whatever field he's taken to, he's always taken with the same mentality. So I'm really not stressed about that situation. I'll leave that to the organization and Mike T.
Yeah, no panic at Saints camp this weekend, but if the holdout drags out, that could change. The reality is the Saints offense needs Mike Thomas in a major way. So Sunday afternoon, we asked a half dozen reporters who regularly cover the Saints whether it might be time for the Saints to cave in to Thomas's demands.
I think that it's important for Mickey Loomis and the brain trust of this franchise to think about life after Drew Brees, all right? And it's coming soon, eventually, right? And I think the responsible thing to do is to give that next quarterback as many weapons as possible. So go ahead and sign Mike Thomas. Yeah, typically I'm not a fan of signing a big receiver and having, the receiver having, taken up that much of the cap. But when you consider the life after Drew Brees, that you're going to have a quarterback that's probably not going to be eating up a lot of the salary cap, you need to make that transition really smooth for him. And it can get really smooth if you keep Mike Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and two complementary weapons that will make life easy for a quarterback that's kind of feeling his way, replacing a Hall of Famer.
We've heard several people report out in the media that they're only $1 million or $2 million off, and in the grand scheme of things, that probably doesn't make that much of a difference. I know they maybe feel like they don't want to be the one to give up that extra $1 million or $2 million, but to keep this guy, which I think you want to have around your franchise for a long time, keep him happy, don't feel like he was kind of ostracized in this whole process and kind of not prioritized. I think it might make more sense in the long run to go ahead and blink first and keep Michael Thomas happy.
But it's not just a Saints and a Michael Thomas thing. I mean, Michael Thomas and his representation may want him to be the highest paid receiver in NFL history. If that's what you really want, they're going to wait. And that's why it's such a multi-pronged issue, and I'm curious to see who blinks first or second or third or fourth among all the receivers that are trying to kind of secure that long-term big-time extension.
I think Michael Thomas has a lot of leverage here. He's on a rookie deal with only making $1.1 million. I mean, he could theoretically sit out this year and say, hey, I'll just wait till next year till somebody will pay me big money. So I think the Saints probably should go ahead and just give him what he wants now, because if they don't, and Julio signs or whoever, and $21 million, then you got to go up $22 million for Mike. So I think I think the Saints are in a tough spot here, and I think they probably need to go ahead and try to get this thing done. And I'm not sure what Mike's asking for, but I mean, we've all heard the figures, and I think they should probably try to meet him at that.
I don't think the power right now lies with the team. The power right now lies with these elite wide receivers who are looking for a contract. But now you got to wait. Who's going to do it first? I know Mickey Loomis said during his pre-camp press conference that did not play into his thinking. But you got to believe it does play into the thinking in some degree, because if Julio Jones signs for, let's say, $21 million, now all of a sudden you're setting the bar for all the other wide receivers. So it's kind of like a give or take here, and who's going to go first?
So this is really fluid, and that's why they're saying, oh, this is going to not take long. You don't know how long this is going to take. And even though it's not a big story right now, day 3 is not here, but as this thing lingers and no new contracts are being doled out, this is when it becomes a curious situation, because you don't want this lingering week 2 of the preseason, week 3 of the preseason. Then you're wondering, oh my gosh, then it becomes, when is this guy going to get here, and becomes a distraction.
Coming up, our panel of analysts tells us which players have been the breakout stars through the first 3 days of camp. Plus, there's some tight competition at the center spot, including rookie Eric McCoy. And later, the Saints defense will be relying big time on Marcus Davenport in 2019. His numbers at Northern Arizona were huge. Emmanuel Butler caught 187 passes for 33 touchdowns, and he went undrafted. But early in training camp, Butler looks like a guy who belongs.
Honestly, it's been a great experience. I'm having a lot of fun out here.
In the early days of training camp, it is easier for a receiver or a defensive back to stand out. For linemen and linebackers, for instance, it's hard to show what they can do without full pads. But the fact is, early training camp success can matter. Back in 2014, an unknown, undrafted wideout from Ball State named Willie Snead became an instant training camp star. He went on to catch 149 regular season passes in black and gold. Then he got a $10 million contract from the Baltimore Ravens. Emmanuel Butler is an early training camp star now.
I mean, it's pretty cool to come out after practice and see your phone blowing up a little bit. So it's been pretty fun after the fact. But when I'm on the field, you know, I try not to focus on it. I try to just focus on, you know, making plays and making sure I'm 100% ready to go.
Butler is the same size as former St. Marcus Colston, with a similar small college story. He says he sees a lot of similarities with Colston, and he's already getting to know his quarterback, who he called the greatest quarterback to ever play the game.
When I very first came out here, actually, it's kind of funny. I didn't really know what to expect because, you know what I mean, I'm kind of like big-eyed, and there's Drew Brees, so I didn't really know what to expect. But after getting to know him, getting to talk with him, you know, he's very down-to-earth, a great guy, great person, you know what I mean, very smart. I try to, every time I'm around him, you know, I try to just soak up as much information as I can. He's so intelligent, he knows so much about the game, and every time that he can, every chance that he's gotten, he's given me little pieces of advice to help me grow into a better player.
All right, back to our panel now. Question number 2. Who has impressed you early in training camp? And guess who we start with?
Wide receiver Emmanuel Butler out of Northern Arizona. All this guy does is over the last 3 days, you look up, he's making plays. Sean Payton has raved about him. Sean Payton said on the first day of training camp, oh yeah, we've noticed this guy. Drew Brees has raved about him. This is a guy, obviously, Payton likes tall wide receivers, and he fits the mold, 6'4", 220 pounds. He's the kind of receiver that should thrive in the Sean Payton offense.
He's consistently doing something good every day. Every day you look up and you look down at your roster and you go, oh, number 17 again, Emmanuel Butler. We just got a chance to talk to him as well, and he's a bright young man. You can tell he's well put together, and I'm pulling for him just from that standpoint. So it's Emmanuel Butler for me.
Undrafted, FCS player. You know, he's got a chip on his shoulder, you know, and we just had the opportunity to talk to him, and, you know, he said it. He's doing everything he can to try to make that 53-man roster, and he looks like he could, you know, 3 days in anyway.
Eli Apple, I'm going to go that route. Specifically today, I thought he had a really good day, and this is an important year for him. Look, he looked great one-on-one coverage. He almost had an interception today, and we talked with him yesterday after practice, and he's more comfortable in his skin than he ever has been. Issues with the Giants, they didn't get along, traded him, and he's more comfortable in this locker room. And I feel like you've seen him grow last year, and you're seeing him grow a little bit this year.
Someone who really stood out yesterday and again today, I feel like, was Cyril Grayson, a Rummel football product that everyone around here is probably going to know fairly well. Drew connected with him yesterday. I think maybe Teddy again today. But we also saw him in special teams, working on punt return, both defending and being a gunner going down. I think that's someone who could be really interesting once we get to that first preseason game, see how much time he gets out there on the field and how they use him.
I think he's a guy that we expect to do well, but Von Bell's a guy who's just making plays, and you've just seen that progression from, this is, you know, his, I guess, 4th year in the league, and you can just see him just getting better and better. He's made a couple plays, some good pass breakups. Jared Cook's a guy that everybody's been anxious to see, and he had a really big-time catch today in traffic. He's a guy. So to stay away from Emmanuel Butler, those are the guys that immediately pop to mind. I think Drew Brees has been really solid. Showed his ability to throw the deep ball yesterday. People have been doubting his arm strength, and he sort of proved them wrong on that deep pass to Cyril Grayson over on Eli Apple yesterday.
Yeah, as I said a minute ago, linemen can really only now begin to show what they can do because the pads are on. And rookie center Eric McCoy opened camp working with the ones. The Saints have rotated that around, and it appears to be a 3-man race for the center job between McCoy, Nick Easton, and Cameron Tom. It would be correct to say rookie Eric McCoy is in an open competition to take over for Max Unger as the Saints starting center. It would also probably be correct to say the job is McCoy's to lose.
I like him a lot. You know, he's quiet, and he's a guy that comes to work. You can see his athleticism jump off the film. You can see that he's quick-twitched and explosive. So that's exciting.
I know as a rookie, coming in, there's a lot on your plate. You're held to high standard here. So he's doing a good job dealing with all that right now.
Obviously, he's a rookie, so he has a lot of work to put in, but, he has the right mindset, the right work ethic, and, he's out there competing.
He don't make the bonehead mistakes. He's been smart. He's been in his book, not missed assignments and all that good stuff. So it's been right for him. It's really good.
Still ahead, we'll focus on the defensive line, where players like Marcus Davenport will try to help the defense go from good to great this season. An argument can be made that no single player needs to take a step forward more than Marcus Davenport. It's now time for him to prove he was worth the risk, and in the process, he could help the Saints defense join the NFL's elite. Andrew Doak reports.
The Saints defense is trying to make the jump from good to great this season, and their defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, believes it all starts between the ears.
First of all, it's the mindset. You know, it's the thought process of seeing yourself as being great. I think we got to see ourselves as one of the reasons why we win games around here, and certainly, you know, that's been our mindset. That's our goal. That's what we're focusing on. But we're not really looking to the end. We're kind of looking on just day to day, you know, continuing to get better, and that's how you do it.
The unit made one giant leap forward last year. After finishing 17th in rush defense in 2017, they skyrocketed to be the second best run defenders in 2018. With the continuity they had formed along the defensive line, and with the giant free agent addition of linebacker Demario Davis last season, they hit bingo. But with one step forward, they also took one step back. It was a challenge for the black and gold to defend opposing teams' aerial attacks for a majority of their previous campaign. They closed out the year sliding back to finish the league's 29th ranked passing defense, but help is on the way. Patrick Robinson, who is now healthy, is fighting with P.J. Williams for the team's starting nickel position, and he was the NFL's top-rated slot corner in 2017. Plus, starting corner Eli Apple has now had his first offseason in New Orleans. After being traded by the Giants to the Saints last season, he became more comfortable with every game, and he closed out his final month and a half with the team, totaling 8 pass breakups and 2 interceptions.
As soon as he got into the groove of things, as soon as he learned the plays, he was ready. He was ready to go. Everybody on the back end, everybody in the forefront, the coaches, everybody got him right. So when he came out there, he felt comfortable. The more comfortable he got, the more plays he was making.
But this season, the most watched, analyzed, and dissected player on the Saints defense will be defensive end Marcus Davenport. He must take a step forward, not only to replace the production that they lost with Alex Okafor leaving in free agency, but also to justify the draft equity that the Saints gave up in order to select him.
I'm excited about Marcus. I'm not excited to take these bull rushes during this training camp. He's strong, man. Strong, got a lot of length, explosive ability. I'm excited about him. I saw it during the season.
When he first got to us, he was 250 pounds. He was raw, talented, still trying to pick up the game. And I mean, he's still picking up the game, but he's done it at such a rapid pace. You saw his growth within the season until he had the little toe injury.
And that injury made it tough to fairly evaluate Davenport's rookie season. He finished with just 4.5 sacks in the 13 games he played. But there were several moments last year that Davenport made himself look worthy of the 2 first-round picks price tag that the Saints paid for him. This offseason, Davenport says he doesn't have a sack goal that he's shooting for this year. He said his main focus was on mobility. But during his rookie season, he does believe he learned some things about himself that will help him in year 2.
I was thinking too much. You know, at a certain point, it's just football, and that it should be fun. You know, I think I let too much of the media and just all around people influence me, and I got to play my game.
During Davenport's media session on Saturday, he pondered comparing himself as the Robin to Cam Jordan's Batman, before quickly retracting the statement saying Robin is lame. But in truth, it's exactly what he needs to be. Last year, the Saints ranked in a tie for 7th in sacks and 7th in quarterback pressures. They were among the league's elite. But Sheldon Rankins was the team's second best sack artist and is still recovering from a torn Achilles suffered in January. Sean Payton said this weekend that Rankin's rehab is ahead of schedule, but the thought of him returning during training camp is still early. What I'm trying to say is the Saints don't need a superhero alongside Cam Jordan. They just need someone who can often do something super, the same player we've seen Marcus Davenport can be. From Metairie, Andrew Doak, 4th Down on 4.
All right, good stuff, Andrew. Here's the schedule for this week. Morning practices in front of the fans in Metairie, Monday and Tuesday. The first day off of training camp is Wednesday, and then back in front of the fans. Oh, and then a closed practice Thursday, back in front of the fans in Metairie Friday and Saturday, and then the Sunday nighter in Tulane. You do not need tickets if you want to go to that Ullman Stadium practice. We're back with more 4th Down on 4 in a minute. We're out of time. Thanks for watching, and thanks for putting up with the scratchy voice. We'll see you next week on 4th Down on 4.